So I think that we are actually, yeah, so we're live. I'm here with Pastor Arnold Dorsett, City of Love in Wilmington, Delaware. And I love him and his wife, Cherie. They were at Rescue Church. They ministered for us, with us. And we've been ministering with them a long time. We actually go back to, I think, the winter of 2006 to 2007, at least 2007. But I think it's actually the winter of 2006 when Abner Suarez rolled through the birthing place, and we were there for like 10 or 12 days.
Yeah.
And it was just absolutely wild. And I miss that wildness, people getting delivered of demons. And it was amazing. We had a great time. That was an amazing way to connect with you and Cherie and Pastor Tony. And so we loved, the whole Wilmington crew, man. We did a lot of stuff. I remember one year we did like 8 conferences together.
Yeah.
And we just have, a lot of love and respect, for you and your wife, Cherie, and your family, and the stuff that you're doing for the kingdom. And so I just wanted to kind of have a discussion with you today, just on a bunch of stuff. But let me ask you this, based upon you, and how did you become a pastor? How did you grow up? What did you overcome? Because you've been through so much stuff that if they see you, you look so much younger than you are. That's one thing. And people have no idea the type of stuff that you went through. And then even with the building with Luke, like there's so much there.
Yeah.
I'd like people to kind of connect with you. Where can they find out more about your church as well?
You can go to our website, www.cityoflovechurch.com. Then you can find us also on all social media handles and stuff. And so we're all over. Yeah. So
that's cool. So you grew up where? How?
I grew up in Wilmington, in the projects in Wilmington, 2 sets of projects, South Wilmington and then North Wilmington. South Wilmington was about 19 years there, where we first started out homeless there. Wow. My family was homeless, and my mom reunited with an old friend who allowed us to stay in their 4-bedroom housing project, and they themselves had 5 kids. Wow. And my mom had 5 kids. So we were all living in this house, and
10 kids, 1 apartment.
10 kids, 1 apartment, 4 adults. So we were all living in this one house, and the Wilmington Housing Authority found out that we were living here. Now, then you weren't allowed to do that. You yourself would be evicted. But the Channel 12, our local news, Channel 12 News, came down to this house, and we were all sitting on the step. And I remember, because I went to school the very next day, and they made fun of us like crazy. So we're sitting on this step. Channel 12 News is filming us and saying, "Hey, if there's anyone who has shelter, who is has some space open for this family is hungry, homeless, blah, 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 blah." And they go through that whole thing. And then I think I'm around 7 years old. And I remember this. And then the Wilmington Housing Authority, they saw this, and right next door to the house we were living in with his family was a boarded up project home. And they did an emergency rebuild, took the boards down, put windows in. I mean, it was just like that. And wow. That's how we got technically rescued from being homeless when the Wilmington Housing Authority. So wow. Then in that area during that time, it was community, but it was pretty bad, drugs and just the whole thing. And so just growing up there 19, 20 years in that area, I learned a lot of what to do, what not to do. Most of my whoopings were environmental whoopings. I got into all kinds of trouble, prison, jail, incarcerated, the whole 9. And so I grew up pretty hard, grew up pretty rough. After a while, I left that area and went and stayed with some friends over in the other projects, and was trying to, at that time, things were starting to turn in my own mind for myself, and started getting more into sports, getting out of trouble,
Can I ask you what happened with your parents?
So my parents in 1996, both of my parents both died. They both had HIV. My mother died January, And they found my father dead in March in the house in the bathroom.
So how old were you when you lost your parents?
I was 19. I just turned 19 when I lost my parents. Now, my parents were very young. My mom was 30, just turned 36, and my dad was turning 39. And so they both were young. And so, yeah, my father was, when they found my father, so once my mom died, they moved us out of there. And I ended up moving, they moved my sister, my brothers, because I had left the home, into the other project housing. And that house was supposed to have been vacant, but the neighbor was kind of smelling this weird smell, not to be graphic or anything like that, but this weird smell. And then she called the Wilmington Housing Authority, and they went into my old house and found my father in there, and they detected that he had been in there for 2 weeks, dead for 2 weeks.
Jesus.
Yeah.
So you're 19, both parents, you grew up hard, you grew up in the hood. So you have everything working against you.
Yeah.
But yet, God, you're here.
Yeah.
You're not wearing what you walk through. You're a man of joy and peace. Like, I mean, that'd be quite a few reasons to be pretty angry. I'd be real angry about it. So,
Right.
So like, God had did something. So when did God get a hold of your life, like in a real way?
Probably in 2003.
That's the same.
I believe.
That's so crazy. That's the same thing that happened to me.
I think it was around that time. I was still kind of like I had a lot against me. Like, a lot of people don't know I dealt with dyslexia growing up. And so I didn't learn how to fluently read until 11th grade. And so I was passed on because I played sports. And so, and that's the truth. And so I had a lot against me. I just was always in survival mode. It was just all about surviving for me, and not necessarily wanting to do the right thing, but when you get caught in those tough times, you don't do the right things because you're just trying to survive.
Yeah.
And so I'd say around 2003, something happened. I was teetering, back and forth in the streets. And, I have another story. I'll tell you another time. but teetering back and forth, I was going to church because I with all that was happening as a kid, my mother she was an intercessor. She really was. She prayed a lot, but she was bound. But she prayed a lot, but she was bound. And that's a story and a message in itself, how, she prayed, but then she was bound herself. And so,
Wow.
So I ended up, getting into church, trying to get back into church and things of that nature. And then just one day, I was tired. I didn't want to die like my parents. I was just tired. I was tired of running, looking over my shoulder, the whole nine. It did not take for me to go to prison to change my life around. This was supernatural. That's how I know the supernatural power of God is real. I know it's real because I was tired of running, and one day the taste was just slapped out of my mouth. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so when I quit, and can I talk real on here? Or
you can get as real as you want, man.
Okay, so when I quit, I had pounds of marijuana in my possession when I quit. I mean, I'm sitting here like, I don't want this anymore. I don't want to do it anymore. And I got friends, not name my friends now, but I had old friends like, you're crazy. I would have did this before I quit. I would have did that before I quit. I walked away bankrupt completely. And it was nothing but the power of God that just did this. But it was my desire. I had this desire, I just want to do it anymore. I just didn't want to do it anymore. And so,
wow.
Yeah. And so I'm skipping around, but there's a lot. Maybe we could do another one. There's a lot in between.
Man, listen, anything you want, man. There's no, man, you could go drugs, politics, every place you don't want to go, you could go, bro.
Okay.
I'm with you. So,
yeah.
So God rescues you. And so you just quit. And, it's really interesting because this is the same type of thing. that happened to me is that the taste for stuff left, and it was grace because it was sovereign. And I said, I'm never going to do this again. And that's what happened. But it wasn't me. It was God's power working
Right.
behind the scenes in my life. And, I also was in a place in my life where I'm like, if I keep going in this way, I'm going to have to shoot people. And I really didn't want to do that. I
Right.
really never had beef with anyone. I never ripped anyone off. I never had to change my phone number because because God changed me. I
Right.
didn't owe anyone anything. I never did stuff for people in that way,
Right.
So when I hear you, and what's really interesting is that's the same time that God got a hold of me. And
Wow.
he used the situation in my family as well. My parents didn't die, but their marriage was about to be over. And
Right.
I said to the Lord, don't make my family another statistic. I said, I'll live for you. I'll go to the ends of the earth for you. And if I have to, I'll die for you. And then the Lord
Wow.
fulfilled all his words, even when my mom, died of cancer. Up until that, the Lord really, everything he said, he did. He restored my family. And I know that, what happened with my mom was really kind of unfortunate, wasn't from him, but even in that tragedy, like what he said, when I made that commitment, he fulfilled it.
Wow.
So I owe him my
Wow.
whole life. He doesn't owe me anything,
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's important. But so God got a hold of you. The taste got slapped out of your mouth. You walked away. You
Yeah.
started going. Now, let me. I think that sometimes people don't get this. So when you grow up, poor, struggling, when you grow up
Mhm.
in difficulty, and I'll just be honest, like you grew up
Yeah.
in America,
Hmm.
black,
Hmm.
struggling. What is how does a young man like that view the church? Because I think that sometimes there's a little bit of there's a disconnect in white America and in black America from how the church is viewed.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
And so for me, like I grew up in one of the only white families in a black church. So
Okay.
I understand how white people think, but I've also been around black folks so much that I understand both people. But for example, like I go to a church in the hood in New Jersey and the pastor is praying, Lord, don't let any of these children get hit by stray bullets. Like that's not a type of prayer that you're hearing, in the burbs.
Right.
You know what I
Right.
mean? But in the
Yeah.
burbs, there's other problems because people are overdosing on pills and killing themselves. So
Exactly.
ultimately, like it's the same enemy trying
Right.
to steal, kill, and destroy. Don't care where you're from, what you have, what color skin you have. He wants to kill you, and he will try to find a way. But explain, if you can, the context of how a young black man would view the church in terms of trying to get out of that lifestyle. Like what is that? Like, how do you see that?
Um, yeah, I can speak for myself,
Yeah.
because I think every situation is different. But for me, I think one of the reasons why it's different for me, because I did grow up in church. My grandmother took me to church. I
Yeah.
did grow up around it. And so I don't feel like I had a distorted view. The only distorted view that I had of church is because of learned behavior, which was just more of a religious type of kind of community than a kingdom. And then I know I don't want to move too fast or jump too far or lose anybody, but I can say it saved me. And I knew that for me, even though I ran from it when I was there, it was right. It felt good. I needed to
Yeah.
be there. Like,
Yeah. Well, that's what I was getting at. Like for me,
okay.
since I grew up, like I said, I grew up as, one of the only white families in a predominantly black church led by a Cuban pastor who escaped Cuba with his family. They know about real hardship, and so we grew up around the supernatural in a Pentecostal Word of Faith church. So we grew up in that environment, and I went to a very diverse school. So I was always had a blessing of being around multicultural people. So my life wasn't only with white people or only black people. Like it was a good mixture, which I'm really thankful. It's also kind of like you're in New Jersey. It's a little bit, the context is a little different. Like there's people on my block from like every tribe, and it's not
Yeah.
because we're woke. It's just because we're in northern New Jersey, and New York City is 5 miles, almost not even 5 miles away. So it's
Right.
just a little bit of a different world. But I wanted people to kind of get, because this is how I viewed it. And this is just me being you know, a white guy. I don't know if that even matters, but I view the church as a way out of the world.
Yeah.
Like a way out of a destructive life, almost like maybe how a kid in the hood would view a basketball scholarship to
Gotcha.
college,
Yeah.
or a Dominican kid when
Yeah.
you know Yankee scouts come, or whatever. You know what I
Right.
mean? A Russian guy who lives in the mountains and gets a job at an oil company. Like this is a way out. So for me, I mean, I'm just saying, like, I think that this transcends skin color, but I feel like my view was like, this is going to help me survive. Because if I keep going down this other road, I'm going to die or kill someone or wind up in jail.
Right. Right. Now that you put it that way,
does that resonate with you? Are you grabbing what I'm saying on that?
I am. I am.
Because that's how I viewed it. And so I didn't want to just assume that everyone viewed it that way. But I would imagine if I grew up in the circumstances that you grew up in, that's how I would see it, because it does represent hope. I know that now, like, all of a sudden the church is bad because there's a few bad actors. But in reality, when you go, you know, into the inner cities, and even if you're in the suburbs and you're struggling with real addiction, you know, no one's perfect at church, but you're going to find people that are going to try to help you. And so I feel like that was, so in your sense, from your vision, it was like, this is a way forward.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Now that you put it that way, absolutely. Absolutely. I felt the way that you put it is exactly right. Just like some view basketball as a way out, some view music as a way out. Right. To me, church was that. And that actually leads into your other question with how I became a pastor. And so,
and then the building,
man, it's all supernatural, all God, you know, relationships, just the whole nine, all God. Wow. And I did view church that way, as a way out. I had a pastor who just loved me no matter what. Wow. And when I thought I was getting away with stuff, he knew about it. He knew about it. This pastor knew. As a pastor now, I would not advise this, what I'm getting ready to say, but this was the grace that was on him, and this was the favor that grace that was on me at that time. But he knew what I was doing, and I still played the drums. And he said this. He has said to the leaders, do not leave him alone, because the day he leaves the church, he'll die. Leave him alone. Yeah. And it left me alone. And I totally understand if people disagree with that, but I'm here today because this man loved me the way.
Because you got mercy. You know something that's real interesting. And this is difficult to say, but it's true. My parents did for me what I probably wouldn't do for my child. And if I would have got thrown out of my house, even though I brought the devil into my house, I probably wouldn't be sitting here with you today.
Come on. Yep.
So as a leader, it's your job to discern how and when and at what measure do you want to dispense mercy.
Yeah. Yep.
You know, because because now, and then, you know, some people hear that, and then you go to the other extreme where you have someone who's openly gay leading worship, and I can't jive with that.
No.
I can't. I'm not. I mean, I love you. You're welcome. You know, we'll pray with you. We'll love on you. I mean, we're gonna, you know, but you know, if you're gonna minister, then you need to live according to the standards. Yet that man showed you mercy, and you may not have been here. So it's like it's a real line of wisdom and the Holy Spirit in terms of, now there's certain things that are just, they're simple. The answer is no. You know, it's not negotiable. We're not debating. Like, you were born a man, you're going to stay a man. So, but you know, there's things where, you know, it's like, man, like you need to, and one of the things that I guess you probably learned is that his patience, you know, with you wasn't his approval of what you were doing.
No, it wasn't.
It was just his love toward you, and love suffers long. And so that man showed you love, showed you patience. And so now you're here today, showing love and patience to other people, I'm sure.
Absolutely. Absolutely. With wisdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
with wisdom.
Yeah.
And as time went on, I mean, you get prophetic words, and I got to be honest about this situation here about how I became a pastor. So prophetic words come, God has called you to pastor, blah blah blah, all these right. So God's called you to pastor, this, that, and the third. And I'm already looking for purpose.
Yeah.
I'm already looking for a way out. I'm already
Yeah.
looking for, all right, I didn't make it in football. I didn't make it in basketball. You know, I'm not going to go into the corporate world. I know this. And so if this is what God called, and I was one of those ones that just believed the word of the prophet. I just believed, unless it was weird. I mean, you know,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can see that, you know, I can see this, you know, and
Yeah.
so in
You
that
bet
process,
you lean toward belief.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And so with that, I grabbed this, I believe this, and now I'm seeking this, I'm going after this, and then I'm saying win. But
Yeah.
you receive a prophetic word, but then you're not taught on how to process it. And so
And it's processing you.
so you leap out there
Yeah.
and it's not time. And then you come back and then you leap out there and it's not time. Now, for me, I'm just trying to obey God, but to others, I'm a failure. His church failed. You know, he tried it. He's not called, this, that, and the third. And so it's just one of those things where I knew that I was called to do this, but I just didn't understand the timing. Now, fast forward.
You know something, when you
now.
talked about failure, let me just jump in one second.
Yeah.
I think that I'll speak for myself.
Yeah.
I think that, and I got delivered from this now, but I think that people are sometimes more afraid of looking like a failure than actually failing.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we care too much what people think.
Right.
And they don't pay the bills. And they're not our judge. And so we need to be open and humble and all that. Yeah, but we can't be ruled by. That was something that I struggled with. I was afraid more of appearing like a failure than failing.
Right.
You know, so it's like, you know, because we live in this image-driven culture where a woman with 3 plastic surgeries who's been airbrushed on a magazine, they tell you that's beautiful, but she don't even look like that.
No, not really.
And then it gets translated into the church world too, where we put up this image of something. You know, I always used to tell people, I'm like, you are not your picture, you know, with 3 filters on it. I said, you're all those pictures in your camera roll that you don't want to post.
Yeah.
Because that's awesome. And people don't like that.
No, they don't. But you know, what's funny is that you're saying this. I just came to terms with myself of saying, I have to be me. I don't care what you think. I don't care how you feel about what I'm doing, whether you approve it, whether you disapprove it. This is between me and God. And I'm going to go and always lean towards what I believe God is saying. However, and so I dealt with that for many, many years, Adam. Like literally, we just had this conversation with leaders dealing with rejection. And even though I lived in the house with my father, but he rejected me though. And so growing up, you're always seeking approval. You always want to, and some of the things that I did when I was younger, I did it for approval. Like I didn't do it.
Yeah.
I just did it for approval, you know? And so now being a pastor, oh man, this, we may need to do another one, but now being a pastor, launching churches and how you launch your church and what direction you should go into. And should you be doing what you see everyone else is doing online and this, that, and the third? That's that's the same thing as seeking for people's approval, just making sure that you are aligning with the way the world and everyone else is doing things.
Yeah.
When yet God has called you to do something totally different. And look like a janitor out there on the streets and not necessarily a superstar pastor who has an amazing online ministry. Yeah. And so coming to grips with saying, God, this is the second time you placed us in a Kensington style community with all these resources in the hood. Yeah, we're in the hood.
I call it the deep hood. You got the hood, and the deep hood. So
we walk out of our church and right across, like literally like one Sunday, I'm getting out of the car and 2 guys are bringing a lady in and they lays her on our hallway floor. She's OD'd. Like, this is what we're dealing with on Sundays when you walk out and there's needles on the ground and kids are walking by it. Like, this is the stuff that that we deal with it. We let the drug addicts in, we let the homeless in, and you go into the bathroom and you see liquor bottles in the bathroom. And so this is the hood.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so this is what God's called me to, because this is where God brought me from.
Yeah.
And so now, in understanding this, I'm a lot more comfortable with just being myself. I'm like, okay, God is not going to ask me to do something that I did not overcome. He's not going to have me be a fraud. You know what I mean? And so go back and get them, because this is what you came out of. And you know this, you understand this, you can relate to this, and you know what it's going to take. And so to my question to God is like, why do you keep putting in? First we were in Kensington. Now we're in what they're calling baby Kensington. Wilmington's nickname is actually Murder Town, USA, because of the high murder rate, even though it's small. And so this is where we are. And I believe that I have the anointing, and I'm wired, from what I've come through, I'm wired to deal with this. And so we're seeing success. We're seeing some success.
Yeah. And I feel like for you, because I know you and your wife, I really feel like you guys are a beautiful crossover, in the sense of, I feel like you could really minister anywhere.
Right. Yeah.
To be honest, I feel like I could go see you in a big, cool church,
Right.
And, little skinny jean worship leader. And,
no, I didn't say I didn't
mind that. I feel like you could vibe with anybody, bro.
I wouldn't mind that, but
yeah. I just want a good sound system. Lord help me. I just want my PowerPoint to work on the screen, God.
Right.
But okay. So you're there, you're ministering, and so God calls you, and you're a pastor, but it doesn't look like as
No.
So it looks different. So now, how long you been pastoring, and tell us about this building testimony, because you used to get, what happened?
So we've been pastoring since 2000. I want to say we were ordained, and we went through that process 2009, maybe 2009, I believe, somewhere around there. And that came through Tony McCleave, the Blessing Place, and we were serving there and helping out there. And so we started pastoring, and we did mostly outreach, which I remember you were part of this one outreach thing we did out of the school
project.
Yeah. And so
I love this, because you did a conference and an outreach.
Yes.
Which I thought was really kingdom, equip people and actually do something.
Right. It was then that I believe God was marking us on what we should be doing, but I didn't pay attention.
Yeah.
I didn't pay attention. And so, we're helping other churches. We're launching small ministries. We're doing a bunch of different things. We're pastoring people personally and mentoring and all those things. But this building situation that we're in, or that we have, came about through a guy named Luke Billman. I think it's Shores of Grace, Philadelphia.
Yeah, I just did a call. I was just on with Nick like 3 days ago.
His brother, yes.
Yeah.
And Luke kind of knows our situation. They both came to our Philly church, and I didn't know their background. Like, I didn't know their UMC background. I knew nothing about their background. And so they come to our church, and that building that we were in, where they came to minister, we had moved from that building, which was on Drexel University's campus, from going to a college campus into Kensington. And so we moved down here in Kensington. We moved to Kensington, and 90% of the church left. Like, now we're going to get our hands dirty. After rolling around on the floor, after getting all empowered, after all the trainings, we get launched into a mission field, and then we're out there by yourself almost. We did get to have some people, but we lost a lot, you know what I mean? And so that was a challenge. So Luke knew that we lived in Wilmington, but we pastored in Philly. And so I woke up one morning on Facebook, Luke hits me up and says, "Hey, listen, do you know of anyone who's looking for a building? I know someone who's trying to sell a building for next to nothing." He said, "I know you guys are in Wilmington." I said, "Well, we had just launched in Wilmington. We were back in that same school. We're back in that same school. It's going well. Families are coming, and I'm trying to launch a traditional television style church, church, looking all cool, skinny jean kind of vibe. And it feels good. It's going well. And then Luke hits me with this, and I'm like, nah, we're not ready for this. Like we just moved here. My overhead is X amount of dollars. I'm just being honest. We're good. It doesn't make sense for us to try and go after a building. We're like a few weeks old. And so
Yep.
after so after talking with Luke back and forth, he said, man, just go see the building. He said, I'm going to get in touch with the head bishop of the United Methodist Church in this conference area, which I knew nothing about the United Methodist Church, nothing about a bishop over it or nothing. But apparently he had a relationship with them. And so he gives me their number. I email them. It's like, hey, I got information from Luke Billman. He said, you guys are, looking to sell a building. He advised that we come look at it. I said, no problem. The guy hits me back later that day. Now, Luke hits me up at 6 a.m. The guy hits me back later that day and say, listen, we can meet tomorrow. I said, all right, where should we meet? He said, let's meet at the building. He gives me the address. And I'm like, wait a minute. That sounds familiar. I think I know where this building is. So I meet him there. I drive down there. As I'm driving, I knew exactly where it was. I knew what it was. And I just started getting overwhelmed about the memories of this building, because this building is the same building that my family and I used to eat when we were homeless. And we would walk from one side of town to the other side of town to eat at the Mission. That is still today, the same ministry is still serving today, 40 years later. They're still serving today. So we go in, and so I'm sitting out front. Let me back up. I'm sitting out front, and I'm sitting here, and I'm like, oh my God, this is wild. And so I'm waiting on my wife to come and waiting on the guy to come. And so as we go in, so I'm sitting there, and right before we go in, I started thinking about some of the old people I remember, my friends. I started thinking about their families. And there's one in particular, this is a true story. One in particular, there's one family I thought about. I said, man, I haven't seen X, Y, and Z for a while. I haven't seen their mom. I know he's moved to Texas. And so my wife pulls up, the guy pulls up, we walk in, and the first person I see is my friend's mom. She's there serving. The woman that used to eat, her family used to eat there with us, was now in there serving the people instead of being served. And so she hugs me, tells my wife all kinds of stories about my mom as my mom's best friend. And so we're in there, and I'm like, in my mind, kind of like freaking out a little bit. I'm like, what is going on? I haven't seen this lady forever. And she's in here. I just thought about her, and I walk in, and she's standing here. When I walk in, Adam,
that's crazy.
The same color plates, the same color cups, the same brown chairs and tables were still in there. They were still, so all these memories are coming back to me. We walk through the building, we go here, go there, and I'm like, this would be crazy if I was able to get this. But I kind of canceled it out, because I was just like, I'm doing this because Luke was like, you should go see it. And so the district superintendent, he says to me, we were even willing to donate it to Ministry of Karen, who's serving in there, but they didn't want it because it was connected to a cemetery. So light bulbs go off. I said he was willing to donate it. So I was like, okay. So I go back to my pastors. We leave the meeting, go back to my pastors, tell them how it was. And my pastor's wife says, since he was willing to donate it, ask him if he would donate it to you. And so I called him right back. I said, hey man, you guys are willing to donate, or you guys open to donate to City of Love Church?
Wow.
And he's like, absolutely. And I was like, are you serious? He says, oh, absolutely. He said, there's a board that we have to go before. So can you guys put a proposal together? This, that, and the third. I said, yes, that's what my wife does. So my wife can put a proposal together. We put a whole ministry together. Fast forward, we meet with them. They were very, very interested in just donating it to us. About 4 weeks go by. They got an offer on the table from another church, and they decided to sell it to the church. So we just leave it alone. And so the district superintendent says to us, he says, hey, I'm sorry that didn't work out. I have another situation, another opportunity for you guys. And hence it's the building we're in today, that we partnered in with United Methodist. He said, we're going to shut this place down because they haven't been a vibrant church in there in almost 15 years. Well, we're going to shut this building down. So I said, where is it? And he gives me the address and he says 22nd and Market. And he says Brandywine. He says Brandywine United Methodist Church. I said, no, 22nd and Market Street is Harriet Tubman. He said, it used to be called Harriet Tubman. I said, oh, I know that place. And he says, yes, we're looking at shutting it down, just letting it go. It's just, we just can't get it. It needs the building needed work, but the area needed a lot of work. It's the baby Kensington. Yeah. We go, we visit. My wife is like, heck no, we're not doing this. You know, Cherie. So yeah. I'm like, no, just wait. I go in and immediately that apostolic just kicks in and I can just see it. I can see what God wants to do here. And we agreed to partner in, help keep this building open. City of Love moves in. And then he says to me, listen, there's a lot of work that needs to be. There was holes in the wall. I don't even understand how they were even having service in this place. Holes in the wall, wow. Roof is jacked up. They had to shut doors down from the sanctuary, use the downstairs because there's raccoons running all over the place in this place. Wow. And he says to me, listen, we have money available to fix up this building. In my mind, I'm like, why didn't the other pastor fix it up? What do you mean? And so we put a proposal together on what it would cost to fix up the building. They give us over $300,000 to fix up this building. Don't have to pay it back. It's their money. It's technically still their building. Let's just fix it up. So now the building is at almost like 90% finished of being rehabbed. Now, fast forward. He calls us back after we're in. We plant City of Love Church into this building. Wow. And ministry is happening. We're seeing, we had a block party. We put a baptism tub out in the middle of 22nd Street where all the abandoned houses are, buildings are with the drug activity. And we baptized almost 20 some odd kids in one day. Wow. And so we got moon bounce going. We got everything happening. And it was, from what I was told, because we were in Philly for so long. So I'm just going off of testimony, that this was the first time they've ever seen anything like this in that area. And so we're just being ourselves. We were doing this in Philly. We weren't trying to do anything special. We just being ourselves, just being the light. So time go by and he says, yeah, he sits me down. He calls me, he says, remember that building that we were looking at donating? I said, yeah. He says, are you guys still open? I said, I thought you guys sold it. He said, now their financial partner backed out. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're good. Have another meeting with them. We signed it on the dotted line. We went, they donated and gave us 10,000 square feet for $1. Fully functioning building, ministry in there. We just put another church in there who was renting from us now. And so, wow. The building that I used to eat at because I was homeless, now I own. And so I tell Luke Billman this, like, I didn't even tell Luke this whole time. So I called Luke back. I told him, he said, man, this is a story of redemption. Like, this is crazy. And I'm like, yeah, dude, like my father had to do 500 hours of community service in this building when he got out of prison. My father got out of prison for attempted murder. And he had to do 500 hours of community service in that same kitchen. God. In that same kitchen. Wow. And so now we own this building, which is highly connected to Harriet Tubman, both buildings. And I'm like, God, what is this? What are you saying? What's happening here? And so that's kind of the story.
That's crazy. Version. So you're breaking folks out of slavery.
That's what from the enemy. That's what it is. Wow. That's what it is. Bro. Yeah. Yeah. Woo! Yeah. So,
man,
and then with
she was a hero. I mean, she was rescuing people.
Yeah, exactly.
You know? I mean, that's
exactly.
Legit. That's legit.
Yeah. And so within this year, we get a building 10,000 square foot donated to us. We get placed in a building that's 10,000 square feet, and then a church donates a bus. All in 1 year. And I'm saying this because I doubted. At first I said, God, are you sure we're supposed to go from Philadelphia to Wilmington? Like, because I kept hearing go home, go back, go home, go home. I'm like, we've been planting and pushing in Philly for years. And I'm like, are you serious? And that right there, just the way God moved in that 1 year, just gave me the assurance we did the right thing.
Yeah.
We did the right thing.
I feel like when you go places that others are avoiding, you get things that other people don't.
Right.
You get to experience favor, opportunities, and so, that's what Jesus did, man. He was always going to places and people that others were avoiding.
Yeah.
And here you go. Here you go, willing with a willing heart, not even knowing it's all mapped out. God's got you. He's going to give you buildings, plural.
Yeah.
And a bus, and
sounds
like one of those tithe professions, jobs, embedded jobs, checks and bonuses, buildings, inheritances. My God. Remember when O'Shea was going, iPads for the kingdom?
Yeah.
So I just, man.
Remember that,
yeah. Buildings for the kingdom, bro. Like that's amazing. So now, you get this huge blessing, and then what happens? The pandemic hits, like that happens?
Yeah. So we get into this building. I got pictures. When we first moved in here, they had 8 members. The youngest was 60.
Wow.
The oldest was 92.
Wow.
Yeah. And the guy who was 92 was a member there for 53 years.
Wow.
So he's still there. This place was it felt like, and I'm just being open. When even the community, even the drug addicts, they said whenever we come in here to use the bathroom, whenever we're giving away free coats, whenever they could do anything for the community, it always felt dreary. If the drug addicts are saying it felt dreary in there. And we walked in, first walked in, the lights weren't really working. The heat wasn't working. It was dark. It was just like, it felt like, I don't want to say that. I want to be very careful. It just felt crazy. Bondage.
Yeah.
So let me say that.
Yeah.
It was like bondage. And it I don't know, man. It's like, I really believe that what the Lord was highlighting for myself and saying to me is, you got what it takes. And I just really felt like that because I doubted myself for so long, Adam. I'm being honest. I doubted myself for so long. I never doubted if I could lead worship and invoke the presence of God. I was full confident in that, but leading people, like I doubted. I didn't know if I had what it takes to really bring a community from one place to another, because I've never done this before. And every church I've ever been a part of, I've gone to those churches after they've overcome. I didn't see the beginning.
Yeah.
I saw when they were winning and there were people and their outreach is happening, but I didn't see from the ground up. And so we go in here, there's 8 people in here. The oldest is like 6, youngest like 60 something. And we take the handful that we planted, man, we go in this place, and then it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy because we moved one bench, we moved one bleacher, and I had to have 4 meetings because we moved the bleacher. Like it was.
I would have moved to Haiti, bro. You're amazing. You can't.
It was hard.
God, that's the difficulty of a pastor. People don't know the stuff you go through.
No, they don't know.
You want to move a chair, folks get tight.
Yeah, there's like who pastors and preachers in hats, who preaches in jeans and ripped jeans and this, that, and the third. And sometimes you kind of have to show. You kind of have to show them the light. You have to expose. Okay, so I said to him, "You guys are meeting with me because the way I dress." I said, I come from this. This is who I am. Well, and then these are like 60, 70, 80-year-old ladies are like, well, that's not how a pastor looks. I said, well, you tell me how a pastor looks. I said, because I'm still trying to figure out what Christianity looks like. Like, you're going to tell me how a pastor looks. And so I said to him, when we first moved in here, I said, you guys said that the community used to come in here, but they don't anymore. But since we've been here, the drug dealers are coming in. I said, I think we may be doing something right. Why don't you just leave it alone and support? Why don't you just pray? Help us pack the bags. Help us do those things.
Yeah.
And just stay there.
What people don't understand, and this is something maybe, because there could be sincere people who want to help their pastor or who want to help. pastors don't need more suggestions. We need more commitment.
See, people don't realize that.
It's like, and it's interesting is that, like, it doesn't dawn on people that we've actually thought about some of the things that they bring to us.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't want to say that in a rude way, but like, we as pastors, we don't need more suggestions or ideas. We need more commitment and more follow through on the things that we're already supposed to be doing.
Yep. That is true.
I'm sorry, I had to get. I had to put the pastoral hat on.
I think that's a good segue because people don't realize that. I think what happens is people make all these suggestions. They do it all the time, and we're still dealing with some of it too, and
the intentions are good, and that's fine.
Yeah, especially if they're older and they come from thriving churches.
Yeah.
And you constantly have to tell them, I'm not your old church. I'm not your old pastor. Why don't you go? And then it's gotten to a point at one time where I was tell a guy, like, go back then. Like, if that's what you want to see, then you should go back to your old church. I don't have that grace on me. I don't have the grace Michael Todd has. Yeah. I don't have the grace. I don't have that grace. That's not on me. Mine is to get dirty. I mean, I'm not saying they're not, because I don't know what else they're all doing outside of we see on TV. I'm not saying that. Yeah, but mine doesn't look. It just doesn't look like that. You know what I mean? And so we can't do home groups because everyone around me is on drugs. So I can't. We can't do home groups.
You can't be smoking weed in the life group, man.
So true.
Yeah,
it's true. And so people do make those suggestions, and it's a lot of it, and it's overwhelming sometimes. People don't realize, like, we're trying to show grace, we're trying to be nice, we're like, okay, yeah, I hear what you're saying, but it's overwhelming when you're constantly suggesting. And so I've learned to just say, hey, listen, go back and read the vision of this church. Does that fit?
Yeah.
And that's just that. If it doesn't fit, then don't bring it.
Yeah. That's all right.
Yeah. So
all right. I mean, I've had to tell people nicely, we're not gonna go in that direction, and that's all right. That's your job.
And then sometimes I've said we're not going to go in that direction right now. Yeah. Because it may have been a great suggestion. It may tie in, but right now this is what we're focusing on. So hold that. Yeah. And then I get this from my wife all the time. She said, if you make a suggestion, you're leading it. Be prepared to lead it. No, you can't call out because it's raining. You can't say, I can't come and lead the group because your back hurt. You can't, you beg for it. You're doing it. So,
you know what John Maxwell said in one of his churches in the beginning. Someone would come to him with a problem. He said, don't ever give me a problem without giving me 3 options to fix it.
Right.
3 solutions. Right. So that's the thing, that most people are used to, because what we have the pastor does everything. So we're going to come to you with a problem. We're going to grow your to-do list, and it's your responsibility, not ours. Right. And that's just not that. See but that comes from the man of the hour with the power. Only one guy ministers, and he's a professional minister. And it comes from more like a television and entertainment model than a model of we are equipping the saints. I think that right now within the church, there's two models that are, I don't want to say at war with each other, but they are the 2 dominant realities as it relates to church. And one is more geared toward equipping, and the other one is more geared toward entertainment. And having a good worship team doesn't mean you're an entertainment driven church. It just means that you have a good worship team. So I'm not villainizing a good worship team. I would love one, but more full team. But what I'm saying is that, you have to make a choice as to which direction are we going to go in. And what it seems like with you guys, since you're driven more toward action and actually doing something, it seems that you've made a clear direction more toward an equipping model.
Yeah.
And you have the excellence. You guys are great at at worship and excellence. So that I feel like it can be excellent, but equipping. It doesn't have to suck for it to be equipping.
Right.
But you're gonna at some point you're gonna have to make a choice toward, are we gonna invest more emotional energy and resources and manpower and time into the actual mission or the presentation of the show.
Right. And that's something that we dealt with. I dealt with in my own mind of what direction and how we should do this. And my wife says all the time, someone had asked us years ago, they was like, if you were to describe your worship, what would it be? My wife said messy. Because when we put our foot on the gas, even with worship, when we're leading worship, we put our foot on the gas and we don't let up. It's just,
I love
we're not here trying to sound like we're trying to get a record deal or anything.
There was folks in our church when you came that had never experienced worship like that.
Really?
Never.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And
So that's what I'm saying. Remember we talked about what's normal is not normal.
Right. Right.
Well, that's
right.
what we're living in, is that
right.
We're used to just going after God 100%.
Right.
That's not normal, bro.
It's not.
What's
it's
normal
not.
is, one fast, two slow. Good night.
Right. Exactly.
Light and sweet message and goodbye.
Right. See, I just had to kind of reset with our leaders about what I felt like God was saying when we come back at the end of this month. And so our worship can't be one fast, too slow, this, that. We are more worship driven, more presence driven. Because I know what it's like to be in the presence of darkness, but I also know what it's like to be in the presence of God. And so I value God's presence. And I know, being a musician, I can only speak from this point because I'm a musician. I know the power of music. I know this. I knew this from the world when I was doing R&B and on Apollo and opening up for Puffy's group 112. I did all that stuff. So I know the power of music on both sides. And so when we're dealing with people that we're dealing with, like the drug addicts, the drug dealers, what we first need is not for them to like our sermons. We need them to feel the authentic presence of God so that they know that he is real. And that's first for me, whether it be through the music, of course, but when you first hit the doorsteps of our church, you feel love. We're greeting you with love. We're not condemning you because of how you smell, how you look, or any of that you're feeling God and the presence of God, his attributes of God, period. And so God's presence first is for us. And then his love. After that, it's still not about how well we preach. Because I am not the best preacher in my church. I will tell everybody that. My wife is like firecracker. My wife is great. Her mom is great. Other leaders are great. I don't, and I don't believe they do this, but I'm not that pastor who sits around trying to figure out the best way to communicate something. I let it fly out of my mouth the way God gives it to me, and that's the end of that. And so for me, it's being the leader, being the apostolic one that sits and sets the tone. For me, it's about creating an environment for our leaders to release the love and the presence of God. Also, for people to come in and feel like they don't have to be perfect, feel like they don't have to have it all together, feel like, you know what I'm saying? And like, even for our leaders, and I may be shifting a little bit here, but even for our leaders, I tell them, our environment is for you to get it wrong. You can get it wrong. As we're raising you up and you go to preach or you go to whatever it is that you're doing, it's okay to get it wrong.
Mistakes are allowed if you're willing to be teachable.
Absolutely. That's a perfect way to put it. And so we don't have that luxury of TV and all those things, but for me, it's about God's presence and people coming in. And so we've seen and had many testimonies where people have come in and said, I've never felt the presence of God like that. I've never been in church and I've never felt that. I've always felt like I was forced to jump around and shout and turn around, slap your neighbor 3 times. We don't really get into that. Like I come from that, but we don't really get into that.
Yeah, I know.
And so for us, it's just really about the presence of God. It really is first.
So I would like to just ask you one question, just in wrapping up. You've overcame a lot. God has broken through with you guys, and you guys are having impact. What do you sense that God is up to? Because right now, there's great instability. in health, in politics, and economics. There's been turmoil as it relates to color. There's been all types of like these kind of like little fires that, and some of them are big fires.
Yeah.
There's all these things, and there's a lot of unrest, and people are anxious, and some people feel isolated, and so there's all these different things swirling. So I know that we can't speak to all of them because we'd just be here all night. But
Yeah.
what do you sense that God is up to, like in the midst of all that? Because for me, the kingdom is transcendent of the culture. God is not a Republican or a Democrat. God, he's transcendent. The kingdom is transcendent. It's not about, so it's about the kingdom first, right? It's
Yeah.
not about, American nationalism first. It's not about my own economic interest or comfort or convenience first. It's not about my own even pain first. It's not about
Right.
my own hopes first. It's about him first. So, and from your context, like, what do you feel like God is up to in the midst of all the things that are happening? Like, what is he up to?
I feel like a few things. I feel like he's exposing what's real and what's not real. I feel like he's also pulling away.
Wow, that's a
Yeah.
fascinating thing. That was your first thing, is exposing. Okay.
Yeah, he's exposing. We're also seeing how much we've relied on our systems, and now with pandemic happening, most churches were not able to operate their normal way, and you're called. You got to depend on God on how you're going to do ministry. I feel like, and that could just be biased because of what we're called to, but I feel like he's pulling us out of the church. The shutting down of the church and all this kind of stuff, and we weren't able to get together. It's so many people. I felt like he was turning our attentions to what mattered, which was community and those that are lost outside the four walls of the church. Now we're starting to see, Adam, to me is, if you notice, more people were doing feedings, more people were doing more outreach. Other churches were trying to find out ways how they can meet the needs of the community in this pandemic. And we weren't seeing that. People weren't televising that kind of stuff. It just wasn't happening like that.
Yeah.
And now that the pandemic is starting to lighten a little bit.
That's because the media only wants to show fear and division.
Right.
It's not because it wasn't happening.
Right. What I'm saying is churches
are
what churches are doing themselves is we were seeing more. Their hearts were turning more towards outreach because they couldn't get together. So they had to figure out a way to reach the needs of the people. So we couldn't do church. We couldn't have 2-hour church, and we couldn't, people weren't streaming in the beginning. They weren't streaming as much. They were trying to figure things out, how we're going to even do church. So I believe our systems that we were accustomed to, I believe the Lord was pulling us away from that. So we focused a little bit too much on trying to have great church and, put great church, good church services into the faces of the people. And so now, again, we're seeing so many churches now all of a sudden, now that the pandemic is not, you don't hear too much about it for whatever reason. You don't hear too much about it. These same churches that were being challenged to come out of their buildings and to do more outreach, and they said, I could get used to the new norm. Now you're starting to see they're starting to do the same thing they were doing before. Now that we're able to go back into our buildings, they're getting back in front of their cameras, and you don't see them doing as much, outreach and on the streets and praying for people. But I feel like, to be honest with you, also what I feel like the Lord is doing is, I believe it's God's original heart. I believe the Acts Church is really what God wants to see in communities. It's just that. It's seeing the body of Christ come to the rescue of the communities that their churches are in, or that some churches are not in bad areas, and so they adopt neighborhoods, and so
but also, it's interesting because context really matters in the sense of where you are, who are you ministering to, and how do you be effective where you are with the people that you have influence with. And of course, our mission should be global. It shouldn't
Yeah.
just be local. It should not be not local. It should be local as well as global. But what I mean is that, we just have to be faithful with where are we, who is God calling us to reach. And the reason I say that is because, like, during this time, there's been a huge rise in suicides, drug overdoses, domestic violence. And so when you look at that, there's great need even in places that don't look needy.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
And so like the mental, I think that mental health is going to be what cancer was to the last generation. I think mental health will be to this generation.
Yeah.
And so, I'm saying that to say, because I understand where you're coming from in terms of outreach, in terms of context. And I think that you guys are doing an amazing job. I'm just saying that within different contexts, like I would say with us, like we were feeding people internationally, but I don't ever recall anyone in our church saying that they were hungry. So
right.
So what I mean by that is that now, if we have people in the church that are hungry, I'm not going to ignore them and be like, we're just going to care about Rwanda. But I'm just saying, in general, like I feel like we have to. For me, it was an invitation to know the condition of people even more.
Right.
And it was a little, in honesty, bro, like, to keep it light and sweet, it was a little surprising, to be honest. Gotcha. I caught a little bit of a sneak attack, like not really knowing, like, oh wow, okay, so the need is a little bit more than I anticipated. And so you see when instability happens, you see who rises up.
Right.
You see if people don't, and so you're like, oh, okay. Right. Right. Like, okay.
Right. But to your thought, even some of the churches we were seeing that were mega churches planted in amazing places, they were finding other places to do outreach. That's
awesome.
They were getting out. And that's what I mean by that. Even though they may not have been planted in a place that needed it, they adopted places. Now you don't see them doing it as much. They're more, and that's their thing. And that's great. But I honestly feel, to be honest with you, just my last point, what I've noticed was, I had looked this up online. I'll share this link with you. That we're calling this the pandemic. This is it's all over the news. It's everywhere. This big pandemic, and they're talking about how many people died. Now in 2020, at the time this was recorded, 1.4 million people died of COVID. But at the same time, same year in 2020, 9 million died of hunger. They're not talking about that.
No, and you know what? And I'm going to tell you something. I hate to say this. The woke media does not sell that because they don't care.
Right.
Now, a lot of those people who are starving of hunger are Black and brown people.
Mm-hmm.
So the new woke media that wants to cancel Dr. Seuss for some reason,
right,
and wants to say it's okay to make a girl a boy and a boy a girl, and they want to push this narrative that we're all racist and we're all, Confederate flag wearing, anyone who's like if you supported Donald Trump, you're obviously a KKK member.
Right.
Like all these narratives, right, are being pushed, yet there's silence on world hunger. There's silence on abortion. Yep. There's silence on the amount of people that are dying from a lack of clean drinking water.
Yep.
And many of those things are all targeting people of color, but it doesn't fit their narrative to control and to manipulate us. So they're silent. Right.
And this article said that at the time in 2020 said that in 2020, more people died of hunger than people with AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria combined. And again, we're talking about this great pandemic. And I've brought this up a few times just to friends, just talking, and you can feel the air being sucked out as if they're thinking that I'm saying the heck with, COVID. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying let's ignore COVID or people may have died from, I'm not saying that. But we are pushing this whole idea of
Too far.
It's too far. Look at what the real pandemic, the greatest and the biggest pandemic, which has always been, is hunger. People are dying, starving from world hunger. And it's crazy because I just don't understand it. I don't get it.
You know what? I'm really glad that you shared that, because you surprised me on that. I didn't know you were gonna. I mean, I know you talk like that, but I didn't know you were gonna throw that in there. And I'm glad, because here's the core assumption. The core assumption is that the whole world is like us in America. And brother, there's hungry people in America, and I get it. And it's unfortunate. And to be homeless in the north of America is a disaster. And I'm not minimizing the struggle in America, but bro, you're talking about people have no safety net, no social safety net. If you get sick, you die. If you're hungry, you starve.
Yeah,
like, it's not like I'm gonna go to the food bank. Like when you guys, I remember you guys are telling me that the Amish folks were delivering trucks of food,
tractor trailers,
like that. That's really like, in many places in the world, there's no context for that. I've got a friend, an African from Angola. He watched them butcher his father for a brick of sugar.
Sheesh.
In a civil war. A brick of sugar. So my point is that, not to minimize the need of America,
right?
But I think that as we look at, even if we're talking about a pandemic, even if we're talking about outreach, even if we're talking about the church itself, we've got to have a global perspective.
We do.
Because really most people don't live like we do.
No, I agree.
In the world, I mean, we're a vast minority.
Right. I agree.
Like there's 3 billion people that would trade places with you and I right now without even batting an eye.
Right.
Without even thinking about it.
I say it all the time. I try to keep things in perspective with my kids too, with our church and with our kids. And and I talk about the gratefulness, just being grateful, and there are people, not to belittle what you're going through, but there are people going through worse than you.
Yeah. I was just on a trip to Haiti, and Haiti was level 4 State Department real bad. And I was with he's an ex-Marine, and now he's a pastor. So when he was out, and this guy, he was fighting the Taliban, like this guy was out there.
Right.
And you know what he said when his guys were all, upset and stuff? He would be like, "At least you're not on fire."
And people think that's insensitive. Like, wow, it's true.
Like he would tell them, to his soldiers, "At least you're not on fire. You could be on fire right now, bro. Like, it's not like you're gonna be all right,
Yeah.
And it wasn't insensitive, but it was just helping them lift their eyes and say, like, okay, yeah, I'm live. Like we're
exactly.
So.
I use an analogy a lot, and I say, how many of you in here has more than 2 pairs of shoes? They raise their hand. How many has more than 2 pair of pants? People raise their hand. How many has more than this, that, and the third? And they all raise their hand. I'd say you living in overflow, where you can wake up in the morning and you can choose what shoes to wear. That's overflow. If you are a husband and wife team and you have 2 cars, you can choose which car to drive. You have overflow. Yeah. Are you kidding me? You can your kids can say, "I don't want this box of cereal today. I want this
that one." Yeah.
That's called overflow.
Yeah.
Like you talking about grateful. If anyone knows, trust me, I know. Yep. And I know there's going to be people that are watching that may have gone through, some of what I shared or worse. But it's that point of when us as believers just get to a place of just gratefulness and not woe is me and praying and asking God for all of these things. And we do that, and just really thinking about what we already have. I mean, just grateful. I mean, I'm literally sitting around, and this is all God. Like, I remember when my wife and I couldn't get drums, we couldn't afford drumsticks, we couldn't afford a keyboard. My house was like a pawn shop right now, and I got instruments everywhere. Like, I mean, it's just overflow. I'm just thankful for what God has done. Even if he just gave me the one, I'm just thankful for that, just grateful, you know what I mean? And so
when you're thankful, you see different, you see differently.
You do.
When someone who's thankful, they see opportunities, not just problems.
Yes.
Someone who is
Yep.
thankful sees potential, not just challenges. And so, yeah,
Right.
that's huge. We enter into his presence through Thanksgiving, and in his presence,
Absolutely.
everything's different.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. Well, I wanted to say thank you, man, so much for your time. I just want to